Hi, my name is Robin Wong. I'm a photographer based in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I have with me the ZTE Axon 30 Ultra. I think the smartphone camera has some interesting features which I want to talk about in this video. Let's do this. Before we dive in any further, here are some important disclaimers. This is not my smartphone. It is on loan from ZTE Malaysia. The ZTE Axon 30 Ultra smartphone will have to be returned after this review purposes. However, ZTE didn't ask me to do this review. They didn't have any strings on me, and I'm not affiliated to them in any way. They approached me and they asked if I'm interested to test the cameras in the latest flagship smartphone, and I thought, why not? The only requirement that they had if I were to publish any photographs taken with this smartphone is to maintain the watermark on each photograph. At first, I wasn't really enticed with that idea, but I thought it was a good challenge. By having the watermark on each photograph, it also proves that these photographs are straight out of the camera with no editing whatsoever. I didn't crop, I didn't straighten. As I compose each shot, I will have to make sure, put extra effort that I got the shot right in camera. I cannot fix it in post. So I took up the challenge. I took plenty of photographs for the past few weeks using this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra, and I cannot wait to share my thoughts with you guys. Just a few more side notes. I am a professional photographer, so I'll be reviewing the cameras on this smartphone based on my experience using it as a photographer. I'm not a tech reviewer. I will not be talking about anything else about this phone. I will focus solely on the camera's performance. Also, I'm not a cinematographer. I'm new when it comes to video, so I'll not be talking about the video performance of this smartphone. I don't take selfies. I don't think selfie is a thing, so I don't see the point of having a selfie camera on the smartphone. I'll prefer not to have it. So if you want to know about the performance of the selfie camera, I'm sure there are other reviews out there that you can refer to. There are 4 cameras at the back of this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra. The main camera has a 64 megapixels image sensor. It has a 26mm equivalent focal length and an f1.6 aperture. It also features image stabilization. The ultra-wide-angle camera module also has 64 megapixels image sensor. It has a super wide coverage of equivalent 14mm at f2.2 aperture, but there is no image stabilization. Perhaps the most interesting camera of all is the 35mm equivalent focal length at f1.9 bright aperture, which also has a 64 megapixel image sensor with no image stabilization. And finally, there is the telephoto camera, 5x optical zoom, about equivalent of 120mm focal length at f3.4 with image stabilization, but only with 8 megapixel image sensor. There's a wide array of cameras for you to choose from ultra-wide-angle coverage all the way to 5x telephoto zoom. There is plenty you can do with the cameras at the back of this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra. Along with tons and tons of images that I'm sharing in this video to show you the performance of the different cameras at the back of this ZTE Axon Ultra, I'll also be talking about the things that I like about these smartphone cameras and also the things that I dislike. Instead of doing the traditional full review, super detailed, going into the specifications and deep diving analysis, I'll just go straight to the point and tell you the things that truly matter. The first thing that I really like about this Axon 30 Ultra is that most of the cameras, they use 64 megapixel image sensor. A lot of other smartphone cameras, they may feature 3, 4, 5 or 6 cameras at the back of the smartphone, but only one of all these camera modules, just one, will feature the best image sensor, which may have 48, 64 or even more than 100 megapixels. Whereas all the other cameras, the ultra wide angle, the telephoto and any other cameras at the back of the camera, they are almost like an afterthought. They are not really important. They feature like 8 megapixels, 12 megapixels or less, and they use subpar lenses. Some of them don't even have full capabilities. Some may not even have autofocus. So it seems like they don't really care about all the other cameras. They just put there just to say that, hey, we have 3 cameras, we have 4 cameras on the smartphone. But this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra, they are really serious about the cameras. They put in 3 64 megapixels cameras, which is more than enough, which will get the more benefits in terms of dynamic range, sharpness, high ISO performance. They all are fully optimized with really high quality 64 megapixel image sensor. The second thing that I really like about this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra is a 35mm camera. I don't see any other smartphone cameras having a 35mm equivalent focal length of a camera. I could be wrong. If there are any other 35mm equivalent focal length in any other smartphones, please let me know in the comments below. But I have to admit that 35mm is a popular focal length for street photographers. If you intend to do street photography, you want a more natural perspective, you may want to avoid ultra-wide coverage. The 26mm main camera may be good to fit as much as possible, being a wide-angle lens, but if you want to create a more natural perspective, you want something to look more realistic, an ultra-wide-angle or a wide-angle lens may not be suitable. So the 35mm allows you to get out of that wide-angle coverage. It gives you a better perspective, it gives you a better, more natural look of the subject that you are trying to compose. And this is especially true if you're shooting subjects that include humans. They will look a lot more proportionate, they'll look less distorted in comparison to using a wide-angle lens. I've been shooting a lot with the 35mm lens on this camera and I'm enjoying it. Maybe it is something new in a smartphone camera and I wish more smartphone cameras will include a 35mm lens. The third thing that I like about this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra is the image quality. Overall, I'm very pleased with what I get out of the cameras from this smartphone. The images come out really sharp, plenty of fine details, it has very good contrast, the colors are not overly saturated, they still look really natural and pleasing, the dynamic range is well controlled, I'm sure there's some HDR algorithm processing happening. I believe there's plenty of computational photography that helped to boost the quality of the images, and they work really fine. And I especially like that the images don't look over-processed or over-sharpened. That is the common problem that I see in a lot of smartphones where there's just too much sharpening happening and there is just too aggressive also noise reduction, even though when you're shooting in broad daylight with plenty of light to work with. There is some noise reduction, you can still see it's quite obvious in the processing of the images from this Axon 30 Ultra. You can still see some traces of sharpening artifacts, but it is not too bad. It is still tolerable, and I think that the processing on this Axon 30 Ultra is one of the best that I've been seeing in a lot of the smartphones today. The fourth thing that I really like about this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra is the low light shooting performance. Even in very dim lighting conditions, you can get really good results from the cameras from the smartphone. Well, except the telephoto camera. The telephoto camera has only 8 megapixels. It doesn't really do very well in low light, so exclude that. The other 3 cameras, the ultra wide angle, the main camera, and the 35mm equivalent camera, they all each have 64 megapixel image sensor that will give you plenty of details to work with, and they control noise really well. Also, on top of that, I find that the processing, the noise reduction is really good. Not only it managed to suppress the high ISO noise when you're shooting beyond 1600, 3200 ISO, but it also gives you a very good balance of details. The main problem that I have with a lot of other smartphone cameras is that the noise reduction is too aggressive, that it just gets rid of all the details. The images come out looking mushy. Yes, there's no noise, but they look really bad. It's like watercolor or painting. Yet at the same time, the camera tries to overcompensate for the loss of details by over-sharpening the images, and they just look so bad. I'm very thankful to report that's not the case for this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra. I think it has one of the best low-light, high ISO image processing that I've seen. In terms of noise reduction, it is really effective to get rid of all the very ugly looking noise, yet at the same time it maintains some level of details and the images still look really natural. The fifth thing that I like about this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra is the autofocus performance. For a smartphone, I find that the autofocus is really fast and reliable. Of course, the autofocus is not as fast as my Olympus cameras, it's not as fast as a professional camera, but for casual use, for snapshots, I find that autofocus is more than fast enough. You should be able to nail critical moments with no issue. I like how responsive the smartphone is. Every time you tap on the screen to focus, and when you snap the photograph from shot to shot, there's very little delay, and I feel that in terms of performance, this is perhaps one of the best smartphone cameras out there. Moving on to the things that I don't like or wish could have been improved in this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra's cameras. Number 1, night mode. The night mode in this smartphone is a disaster. Try to avoid using it at all costs. It somehow tries to over-brighten the scene and it makes it look so unnatural. It will select very high ISO numbers, more than necessary, and at the same time it will lower down the shutter speeds to dangerous numbers. There is higher chance of blur, and it doesn't look good. The images look so much worse versus when you're shooting with the normal camera mode. And trust me, even in low light situations, if you're shooting at night, using the normal camera mode, you can get plenty of details and the noise is already very well controlled. So try not to use the night mode if possible. The second problem that I have with this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra is not remembering which camera used last. So when I'm shooting with, say, an ultra wide angle camera, as I exit the camera mode and I enter it again, I turn on the camera, it will default to the main wide angle camera. I wish that the software would allow me to remember the last camera that I used. Let's say that I was shooting with the 120mm 5x zoom camera. Let's say I'm shooting a building from far away and I get a notification. Someone sent me a text and I opened up the app and I read the text, I replied and went back to the camera. I wish that it stays at that telephoto range so that I can continue shooting rather than it comes back default to the wide angle camera. That could cause me to miss some shots. My third complaint is not exactly a deal breaker, but I wish all the camera modules have image stabilization. Currently, only the main camera and the telephoto camera have image stabilization, but the ultra-wide angle camera and the 35mm equivalent focal length camera, they both do not have image stabilization. I really wish the ultra-wide angle camera has image stabilization because that is the mostly used camera for panoramic shots, the super wide scenery shots, especially shooting at night. And that ultra wide camera can really benefit from image stabilization, allowing you to take sharper photographs and lowering down the ISO number. I think it will really benefit the shooting experience overall. That's all I have to share about this ZTE Axon 30 Ultra's camera's performance. Overall, I'm very happy with what the cameras can do. I see no significant issues, there are no deal breakers. Anyone, even photographers, will be very happy with the performance of this smartphone camera. It does give you very good results, very sharp images. 3 of the main camera modules have 64 megapixel image sensor. You get very optimized output straight out of this smartphone. And at the same time, you also get 35mm equivalent camera, 35mm focal length, which is a popular focal length for street photography. I don't see any other smartphones having this, and that itself makes this camera truly stand out. If you have enjoyed looking at my photographs or you have found my sharing beneficial to you, please consider buying me a cup of coffee, or you can contribute directly to my PayPal. Links in the description below on how you can do that. Any small contribution goes a long way, will definitely help me to continue making videos like this and publish them right here. Please consider to subscribe if you have not done so. Give me thumbs up, comment and share, and I'll definitely see you again in the next one. Until then, please go out and take more photographs if you can. Bye-bye.